everyone. I am Angelique Jackson, and I am your host for today's half hour with American Fiction. Joining me now is the writer, director, and producer, really the mastermind, and not to mention an Emmy winner, who is making his feature directorial debut with this incredible adaptation of the novel Erasure by Percival Everett. We have Cord Jefferson.
Hello.
Oh. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me to talk about this film. And before we get too deep into what we are doing with American Fiction, can you give us a quick overview? How would you describe this movie?
I would say that American Fiction is about a Black novelist who is frustrated with the constraints that he feels is put on the art that he's allowed to make. And so he decides to pull a prank that he thinks is going to embarrass a lot of the publishers who are making the kind of art that he despises. And instead, the prank becomes a massive success, and he's forced to deal with the ever sort of expanding series of lies that he's told.
I mean, listen, be careful what you wish for sometimes.
Exactly.
Let's take a look at the trailer.
How did you come to write this book?
What really struck me was that too few books were about my people. Where are our stories? Where's our representation?
Would you give us the pleasure of reading an excerpt?
Yo, Sharonda, girl, you be pregnant again? If I is, Ray Ray is gonna be a real father this time around. Thank
you. Monk, your books are good, but they're not popular. Editors, they want a black book.
They have a black book. I'm black, and it's my book.
You know what I mean.
Look at what they published. Look at what they expect us to write. I just want to rub their noses in it.
I be standing outside in the night.
Deadbeat dads, rappers, crack. You said you wanted black stuff. That's black, right?
I see what you're doing. We sold your book.
No.
We believe Mr. Lee has written a bestseller.
It's a joke.
The most lucrative joke you've ever told.
Now, is Stagg a pseudonym?
Yeah.
Mr. Lee can't use his real name.
Is this based on your actual life?
Yeah, you think some bitch-ass college boy can come up with that shit?
No, I don't.
Can I ask what you were in for? Was it murder?
Yeah, you said that, not me.
They ran 300,000 copies.
Your books change people's lives.
They're offering $4 million for the movie rights.
Yes! The dumber I behave, the richer I get. This has gone too far.
Stagg Lee is still on the run from authorities.
You haven't done anything. It's not like they can arrest you.
Wish I could go back to not selling books.
Is it bad to cater to people's tastes?
People want to love you, Monk. You should let them love all of you.
There's already so much buzz because of the movie deal.
Michael B. Jordan is circling.
We want to put him on the cover in one of those scarves, I guess you would call them, tied around his head.
A do-rag?
Do-rag, that's it. Do-rag and a tank top with the muscles showing.
Somebody call the fire department.
We're thinking we can get it out in time for Juneteenth.
Everything about that trailer makes me laugh. I remember the first. Well, what when you now are kind of on the other side of this, you have, you read Erasure, you decided, you know what, I think this has it infuriated and inflamed something in me that is going to make me make my own version.
Yeah.
Now that you're on the other side of it and it's being received, this film keeps winning audience awards, of course, starting with TIFF, and it is being so well received also by the industry with which it is essentially lampooning as well.
Yeah.
What is that like?
I mean, it's been amazing. I think that, I had never directed anything before this film. I had never written a movie before this film. And so I was very, very nervous going into the process that I was going to fail hugely, right? And when I was done with the movie, I knew that I was proud of it. I knew that I liked it. But then you have to release it to the world and see what other people think about it. And so I was terrified doing that. It's a very vulnerable experience to put anything that you make out for the assessment of other people. And so the fact that it has been so well received and it has all this momentum, it just, it's overwhelming. But I just feel so grateful and overjoyed that the thing that I made is being well received by others. That feels good. It feels nice.
Yes, well received and accurately received, not put out on Juneteenth.
Yeah, exactly.
let's go back to the beginning. When you pick up Erasure, when you read this book, what was it about the story that made you say, I want to do this and I want to do this as my first thing? Because there are so many layers to it, and especially for what we saw in the trailer, you're hitting a lot of different points in this satirical film.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, the thing that really hit me was that no piece of art had ever resonated with me deeper than that novel, than the novel Erasure. I sort of read it in December of 2020. Obviously, that was a bad year for a lot of people. But besides sort of like COVID, that was also a year I had a really major professional setback where I thought I was going to I came very close to getting a TV show on the air. And at the last minute, it was killed. And so I was kind of flailing creatively, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do next. And so I read this book just by coincidence. I was reading a book review for a different book, and they mentioned Erasure in the review. And so I went out and got it, and kind of 20 pages into it, I was like, maybe I think I might want to adapt the screenplay for this. And then about 50 pages into it, I thought maybe I want to direct this. And then I started reading the novel in Jeffrey Wright's voice. That's how early I started thinking of Jeffrey for that part. And so it was, it wasn't just sort of like I don't want to spoil too much, but it wasn't just about the professional themes, in which sort of this Black writer is sort of feeling like there's constraints put on him as to what he's allowed to create. That stuff resonated with me. But also, there's a lot of overlap from the story with my family. There's sort of like there's 3 siblings. I have 2 older brothers. We have sort of like a complicated dynamic sometimes. There's a sort of like looming father figure. We have a sort of like overbearing father in my life. There's just a lot of overlap where it started to almost feel eerie as I was reading it. I was like, it feels serendipitous. It just felt like I found the exact right thing at the exact right moment in my life. There was just a confluence of all these different things that it just felt like it was electrified when I was holding it.
Well, I'm glad that you teased it just a little bit, because that is the one thing the trailer kind of teases to us, but isn't quite able to show all of. But there's also this beautiful family storyline. And there's a lot of, you have this incredible ensemble cast, everyone from, of course, Issa Rae, who we saw there, which speaks to the professional side of things, but also Tracy Ellis Ross, Sterling K. Brown, who play those other 2 siblings. When you're trying to find that balance and tell this story that is, obviously speaking to how this man's professional life is progressing forward, and then how that mirrors what he's also going through in his personal life, what was the key to getting that balance right?
Well, I think that firstly, I just wanted the film to feel like life, and I think that the thing about life is it's neither comedy nor tragedy. It's occasionally both of those things in the same day, if not the same hour, right? So I was sort of like aiming to make it feel like life, and so that was a sort of difficult balance from time to time. When I wrote the script, I said that, and sort of at the beginning of the project, that I told everybody at the outset, I want this movie to be satirical, but I don't want this movie to be farcical. I wanted to always make sure that it never sort of like got slapsticky and silly and sort of like collapsed under the weight of the comedy. And so one of the sort of like, I love the family storylines just because I love those characters, and I think that they're sort of really, really important to the narrative for me. But besides that, from a sort of like more technical level, that stuff I think really helps ground the film, so it doesn't sort of like float away with sort of like with the satire stuff and become sort of like this silly farce, as I said. So I just think that that's sort of like finding that balance. Sometimes we found, I tried to find it in the script. Sometimes we found it on set as we were shooting. It's just felt like this is maybe a little too comedic and we need to sort of like rein it in a little bit, or this feels a little too dramatic and we need to sort of like find some levity here. But a lot of it was also found in the edit. I worked with this wonderful editor named Hilda Rasula, and we sort of like, sometimes we omitted scenes, we omitted lines to sort of like really strike the delicate balance that we wanted. So we wanted it to feel like, like I said, we wanted it to feel like it was doing this tightrope walk between emotions. And I think, hopefully, I believe that we threaded the needle, and hopefully other people agree.
Absolutely. You've got at least one vote here on this Zoom.
Thanks.
Okay, so let's go back again for a second. You mentioned you were reading this in Jeffrey's voice.
Mm-hmm.
So then you obviously have to go to Jeffrey at some point with this script, with this idea. What were some of your earliest conversations about what this character would be?
I went and met Jeffrey one day for lunch in Malibu. Something people don't know about Jeffrey is he's a big surfer. That may surprise some people. But went to meet him in Malibu sort of after he was done surfing for the day, I believe. And we just started chatting about, he asked me probing, he'd read the script a couple times, and he was just asking me probing questions that somebody asks of somebody that they might collaborate with on a big thing. So he was asking me the tone that I wanted. He was asking me what other actors I was thinking of being involved with. But the number one thing that both he and I agreed on, that we talked about sort of at the outset of the conversation, that was really important to me, was he said, I hope you're not interested in making something that polices blackness. And that was sort of the first thing that we agreed on. As I said, absolutely, I don't want this to be like a respectability politics movie or a Talented 10th movie where we're saying this is how you be a good black person in the world. Never wanted it to police blackness, never wanted it to police art, and especially didn't want it to police black art. It was sort of that was sort of both on our at the forefront of our minds when we were starting on the project. So to me, he's the one who asked me that question at first. As I said, that was one of the first things he asked. And it made me realize that, it made me fall in love with him even more. It made me sort of like want him for the role even more. It didn't happen that day. It took a few more months to finally convince him. Yeah, Jeffrey played hard to get. It's fair. It's within his rights. He's one of our best actors. But when he finally signed on, I will be forever grateful to him because I would have been so crestfallen had he not signed on, because as I said, he was the first and only person I was going to with this role. But then also he helped really legitimize the film, and I'll be forever grateful to him for that. He, once Jeffrey signed on, the financiers were willing to come up with more money. Other actors were more eager to get onto the project because they were excited to work with Jeffrey Wright. I was this unknown quantity director. I had never directed anything before, so people were excited by the script, but they were a little skeptical, I think, of my abilities behind the camera. And Jeffrey's trust in me, I think, sort of like really allowed other people to start trusting me as well.
What was it like to watch him then on set delivering these things that you had imagined in your brain? Without giving too much away, you also use that as a device, of course, within the film as well, as part of the story too.
Yeah.
What was it like for you to, were there moments on set where you were like, yeah, that is exactly how I pictured it. So glad he did say yes.
Yeah, I think that, yes, Jeffrey's just one of the things that he did that I hoped that he would do, and I was right, is that, Jeffrey's just such a brilliant actor. And I think that people sometimes think that dramatic actors cannot do comedic roles. And I was confident that he could. And one of the things that he does so well is he plays it so subtly. He's never he's not broad at all. He's never he really has sort of like faith in himself and his abilities in a way that I think that some people might come into a role. Some people who sort of like are normally used to doing dramatic roles, I think, might step into a role and feel like they need to be very big to be comedic and get laughs, and sort of like be very farcical, I'll say again. And I think that's something that Jeffrey really trusted himself to do, is just play it subtly and allowing that subtlety to sort of like be what's very humorous. So, you know, one of the things that I started doing early on in the shoot was I just realized that, you know, we don't need to be so cutty the way that I think a lot of comedies are cutty. It's like sometimes it's great to just linger on Jeffrey's face, because sort of like his facial expressions are some of the funniest things in the world. Like it's just like, just leave the camera on Jeffrey while these people are doing insane things around him, and he plays such a good straight man, and just sort of like you just allow him to sort of like make his facial expressions, and it makes the scene 10 times funnier. So I think that that's something that Jeffrey really brought to the role that I was hoping he would bring, and he did. It's just he has this just tremendous subtlety and really great comedic timing that I was just delighted to see when he brought it.
It's funny because as a Black person who has maybe been on the other end of one of those phone calls, you're also having those context things in your head that you can't say as you decide what the code switching answer is going to be.
Exactly. So
it's, I mean, there is a ton of humor in that. There is, you know, there is this idea that this is a movie, and I love that that was one of the first conversations that you and Jeffrey had, that is about, you know, it's not about respectability politics. It's not about the benefit, like, oh, your life will be so much better if you code switch. It's not about that, you know, one type of art is better than the other. It is offering this debate. What was important to you about getting across about, you know, especially about our proclivity towards making art about Black trauma?
Like I said, I'm not out to police Blackness, and I'm not out to police Black art. And, you know, I think that there's somebody, you know, some person might sort of like feel like, oh, before they see the film, like, oh, is what he's trying to say that like we shouldn't make movies about slaves, or we shouldn't make movies about people in the inner city. And I want to make clear that absolutely not. That's not what I'm intending to do at all. In fact, I think that in a country in which we have people actively trying to ban children's books and to soften our lessons about slavery and racism in America, and to try to sort of like rewrite history in these ways actively, I think that those kinds of movies are more beneficial than ever and more important than ever, you know, to remind people that this happened. I think the question that I'm more interested in asking is, why do we keep making these movies to the exclusion of every other kind of movie that you could make about Black life? And sort of the thing that I'm interested in exploring is, American history for Black people does include slavery. It includes the crack epidemic, right? Like it has these things that is part of lived experience and true. That being said, the Black experience in America also now includes being the president of the United States, you know? And so between those two poles, between slave and president, there's a million other stories that can be told. And so why do we keep telling the same 6 stories to the exclusion of every other Black experience that exists? And that to me is a more interesting and important question than like, why is this person making this art that I don't like, you know?
And also the nuances of the Black experience as well, the everyday elements of it too. The idea that, you know, it's often excellence. It's all about, you know, only the people who made history. And it's sort of why the do-rag joke works so well too, because in some ways, Black hair care is not focused on enough in movies and television. So we do kind of need to see those images as well. Absolutely.
I think that for me, I just feel like every Black person at a certain point tries to fight against this you know, this sort of thing that people have agreed upon in this country, which is that Blackness is a monolith, and that sort of like we all believe the same things and vote the same way and come from the same backgrounds and sort of like grow up doing the same things. Like, you know, that the thing that I sort of want to get across with the film, one of the things I want to get across with the film is that, you know, our lives are as varied and broad and deep and nuanced and complex as everybody else's life. And sort of like that is not really reflected in a lot of art sometimes. It's sort of the expectation is that we've lived, we have one lived experience that sort of encompasses all of Blackness in America. And I think that to me, it was important to, show the sort of like depth and complexity and nuance and interiority of Black people, and that even within the same family, it varies, let alone sort of the entire country and world.
Absolutely. And that's what we were discussing as well earlier, the idea of the parallels between, the internal and also the professional, because it all is the same kind of conversations and struggles often at the same time in how our relationship is to it. I was thinking while you were talking about also the idea that I do just also really love seeing bougie Black people. Black people with a beach house.
Absolutely.
So the idea that you were filming in Boston, able to show this, upper middle class family, this family of all of these various, super high class professional roles, but also have characters in this film that also work in more service industries and getting again to show that breadth. Tell me a little bit about rounding out this ensemble and what was so important about, all of these incredible actors that you were able to pull into this movie.
Yeah, I mean, people, in my opinion, rightfully talk about what an incredible cast this is. And I do agree that we have an incredible cast. And I think that, one of the reasons why I think we were able to get the cast we were able to get is because Black actors want substantial roles. Black actors want roles that sort of aren't just roles in which they are there to help the plot move forward for the white leads. They want to sort of like feel like they're playing real people who are nuanced and complex. And so, I think the thing that was appealing to a lot of these actors was the fact that they were able to play real people and they weren't just there to sort of like move the plot forward, and they weren't going to be they weren't going to feel like actual lived in human beings. And so I think that I feel incredibly grateful that we got the people that we did. I think that sort of it made my job easier, and I'm excited for people to see these one of the things that struck me after I was done making the film, I hadn't even really considered it until I was done with the movie. It was, I hadn't seen Jeffrey Wright in a lead role since Basquiat. That's almost 30 years ago. And I think that people who know this stuff, people who know film and television and theater and acting, like people who are interested in these things, universally, they will generally say that Jeffrey Wright is one of our greatest living actors. Like Jeffrey Wright is truly a national treasure when it comes to the performing arts. And to me, it is wild that he has not been a lead in that long, that I haven't seen him as a lead in a film for that long. I think of the same thing for Eric Alexander. Eric Alexander was the heart and soul of Living Single, which was a huge part of mine and a lot of Black people, a lot of people in America's childhoods. She's Maxine Shaw was, a beloved television character. And then all of a sudden, where does Eric Alexander go? Where are her substantial roles? And so to me, I just feel so fortunate that I was able to get the people that I was able to get. And I think that one of the reasons, and hopefully people start to understand, like, there's a lot of really, really incredible Black talent out there that is being underutilized because people's imaginations don't extend to these actors. And it's like, I really, really hope that people will start to wake up and realize that there's a lot of wonderful people out there who are looking for good work, and you just have to write them good roles, and they will come and be incredible.
Well, I want to ask you about you taking on a new role. I know you said initially it was pretty nerve-wracking, the idea of this being that directorial debut, but now that you've done it, now that you have it under your belt, what did you learn about yourself as a filmmaker? What did you learn was a strength of yours?
Felt like I was kind of directing when I was writing, which I didn't realize. In that when I was writing scripts, I was already thinking about what the characters would be wearing. I was already thinking about how they'd be moving around the room. I was already thinking about how I envisioned this character saying this line or enunciating this specific word. I just wasn't articulating that stuff to actors and production designers and DPs. I was sort of like just already, it was just all in my head. And so there was part of it that was, I was already doing that work. I was already sort of like had a vision for what this was going to look like. And then the second thing is how much I was going to love it. I think that is that I was sort of, I love working in television. I will always love working in television. There's always a part of me that wants to do that. But sort of like, television, at least my experience in television was frequently drive into the Universal lot or the Warner Brothers lot at 10 a.m. and you go there and you work in this air conditioned room all day, and then you order an expensive salad from Mendocino Farms, and then you go home at 6 p.m. Right. And I really love that job. Obviously, it's a wonderful job, and I've had some great success in it, and I've learned a lot, and I've had worked on some wonderful shows with some great colleagues and bosses. But the thing that I didn't realize I was missing out on is I just love being on set. I like, even in the worst of times, 1 a.m., you're tired, you're hungry, it's raining, you're cold, you're miserable, you're sort of like having to on the fly move from an exterior because it's rainy to an interior. Like, these kinds of things, even as frustrating as it can be, I just loved it. There's something about the camaraderie that you build with people when you're just sort of like in it every day, and you're just creative problem solving, and you're working in close quarters with all these people. Like, there's just something so fun and challenging and different about it, that I didn't realize that's what I'd been craving. I've very much, writing for me is very, very frequently, I started out as a journalist before I got into film and TV. And so writing was just very much a thing that I did indoors in my room or at my desk. And I didn't really sort of like get out there. And I think that just being out there and getting my hands dirty with these people and really being in the thick of it, that was, I don't know. I just fell in love with it. I want to do it forever. It's gotten under my skin in the best way possible.
Well, listen, with this debut, we can't wait to see it again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, I have one final question for you, Cord. And this is kind of summing up and previewing, if you will, what is to come for the folks who haven't seen this movie yet. But so I guess my question to you is there one thing about American Fiction that stands out for you that would make someone want to run to the theater and check it out, or better yet, to check it out again?
You go to the movies because you want to experience something that other people are experiencing at the same time. I think we should start treating the theatrical experience the way we treat live music. You have ways to listen to music at your home, but the reason you go to see a live performance is because you want to be amongst other people who are experiencing the same thing that you're experiencing, right? And so to me, I can promise you that seeing this movie in the theater is going to be a much more fun experience than watching this movie alone. You watching this movie alone, look, I promise you're going to enjoy it and have a good time. But being in the theater and sort of like feeling the sort of like waves of emotion that are going on, because there's going to be people who are laughing a lot of stuff. You're going to be feeling sort of like the dramatic moments at the same time as them. And I can guarantee you that the things that you laugh at, not everybody's going to laugh at. And the things that other people laugh at, you're not going to be laughing at. There's going to be a sort of like wave of different experiences that are going on that I think that you're going to want to feel like you're a part of, and sort of like feel like it feels like an amusement ride in that kind of way. And then on top of that, I feel like this is going to be a movie that most people are as soon as they leave the theater, they're going to turn to whoever they saw it with and say, do you want to go get food and talk about what we just saw? Because I have so many thoughts about it. And that to me is sort of like the biggest dream, is that, I don't want this movie to be didactic. I don't want this movie to feel like it's spoon feeding anybody lessons or morality. I just, at the end of the day, want people to come see this and have a good time and laugh and leave with a smile on their face, and then go talk to their friends about it because they're thinking about it afterward. That to me is the biggest dream.
Well, listen, can confirm I did laugh at one of those moments where it was literally only me laughing. And I said, who is in this movie theater?
Exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that to me is a delight. I think that, yeah, I'm so excited with the reactions that people are having. And it's from all kinds of people, it's people from older people, younger people, white, black, every race, the sort of, that has been sort of like one of the most gratifying things is seeing how many different kinds of people are leaving the theater with a smile on their face and having sort of like enjoyed something. So yeah, that's been sort of like one of the most satisfying results.
Well, thanks to you, Cord, most of all. And thank you to our friends at Orion Pictures and Amazon MGM Studios. And also thank you to everybody watching. We really appreciate you joining us today for Half Hour.
I had a lovely time. Thank you all so much.